Man will be home after 5 years held captive by the Taliban in Afghanistan. But tonight, the political fallout reaching new heights. The president standing behind the decision to free him in return for 5 high-level Taliban detainees. This while new questions over how he went missing are surfacing. Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is reporter Tom Fitzgerald. And Tom, this isn't just about his release. It's turning into a political infighting tonight, and some big questions coming from Congress on all this, right?
Well, you're right about that, Mark. And, you know, the questions surround the details in all of this, details that some members of Congress today say they should have known more about before this deal was finally done. Sergeant Bergdahl is being treated in a military hospital tonight, but the Pentagon today announced it has launched its own probe into what his actions were in connection with his disappearance.
We still get an American soldier back if he's held in captivity, period.
A defiant President Obama in Poland Tuesday defending his move to trade 5 Taliban prisoners for captured Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl.
We had the cooperation of the Qataris to execute an exchange, and we seized that opportunity.
But some members of Congress say the price was too high. 5 Taliban prisoners held by the U.S., one of them said to have ties to Osama bin Laden. But here on Capitol Hill, this prisoner release has launched a new round of infighting and a new indication of the poisonous political relationship between Democrats and Republicans.
What is the price we may pay or likely pay in the future in American blood in return for releasing these 5 hardest of hardcore jihadists who are not only Taliban but also Al-Qaeda?
Whatever happens is turned into a partisan issue, because this is a very political context in which decisions are made.
The Army, meanwhile, has launched an investigation of Sergeant Bergdahl's 2009 capture, even though a 2010 Pentagon probe concluded he had left his post on his own.
It's considered very serious in the military.
Retired Major General John Altenberg was an Army lawyer for 28 years. He says if investigators find Bergdahl is at fault, he could face serious military charges.
The charge would be desertion. Technically, that's a capital offense in time of war.
Public opinion, meanwhile, is mixed over whether or not the U.S. should negotiate with terrorists.
I thought that he was supposed to check with Congress on top of it.
I wouldn't be opposed to it if we were making the right kinds of deals.
The president himself admits there is no guarantee the released detainees do not pose a risk.
Is there the possibility of some of them trying to return to activities that are detrimental to us? Absolutely.
More questions are likely to swirl, though, until Sergeant Bergdahl himself can start providing answers. Well, here in Washington tonight, Speaker John Boehner released a statement saying Congress was told 2 years ago that a deal might be in the works, but that under law, Congress should have been notified within 30 days before that deal actually was done. Sergeant Bergdahl tonight is listed in stable condition. Mark, it is not clear when he's going to be returned to the United States.
Tom Fitzgerald from our Fox station in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much tonight. We appreciate it. Now, while the president is defending the move and other politicians are criticizing it, many war veterans are involved in the discussion as well. And joining me now is retired Army Sergeant Brian Kelly. And Sergeant Kelly, you served in Iraq and Afghanistan, then you went back to Afghanistan as a contractor for the State Department. Leaving a base alone in Afghanistan, not something that happens very often, I'm sure, probably not a smart idea. Would you say, if it's true that this man is a deserter, did he walk right into the Taliban's hands, and could it have been intentional?
Absolutely, Mark. A guy like that in that situation, regardless of the unit, regardless of the sector of the Army, Marines, Navy, I don't care who you're with, you don't desert your post. Not only is that hurting your fellow soldiers, but it's hurting your country. He probably rendered that position where he was at combat ineffective, which means now they are no longer competent to engage with enemy fire. So you're immediately endangering their lives, but then the follow-on ripple effects are just exponential. I mean, you're talking about units that now have to completely change their mission to go find this one guy who probably left because he wanted to, because he wanted to become a Taliban.
Right, and at least 6 servicemen killed in Afghanistan while searching for Sergeant Bergdahl. Is bringing him home a vindication of their deaths, or if he deserted, should he be held responsible for the lives lost?
Well, I wouldn't call it a vindication of their deaths, but I think we needed to get him back to the States, regardless of the manner that we did it, whether it was right or wrong. That's for the politicians to decide. Now that we have him, the Army and the military need to charge him with desertion and give him a fair trial, because I think there's enough evidence to support that. And if you talk to the guys in his unit, I think they'd agree.
You know, you hear from all the people across America, they have certainly different views on this topic. And let's say he did desert. Is it possible a young soldier, walks off because he's mentally unstable, perhaps suffering or disillusioned by the war? Should he be treated rather than punished, is the argument?
Well, here's the problem. In an infantry unit like that, I was in the same exact type of unit, an airborne infantry unit. You get two types of people. You get type A and you got everyone else. Now, the problem is the type A people, you have to manage guys like this on a daily basis. And it's a gray area because you don't know, can we save him? Can we not? How much evidence is there that he needs to be maybe seeing a psychiatrist or needs to be seeing someone to talk about his problems? It's a large gray area, and that's part of the problem that's evident in this exact scenario.
Are they the exception to the rule?
I couldn't say.
No. Well, in your opinion, 5 years of the Taliban, time served or more punishment in order here?
I would say punishment.
You've heard the president say they had a sacred obligation to leave no man behind. But, is this a different situation we're talking about? Remember, a lot of times they had these exchanges. It was after the wars were over. This is not through in Afghanistan as yet.
Right, that's true. And actually, historically, many of these exchanges, prisoner exchanges, have happened with our government in former wars. Now, we've done them on the battlefield. But this particular case, well, first of all, Congress is blindsided, so that's a whole other issue right there to deal with. It's just a mess. It's a whole sticky mess, and I think the president is going to have a lot to deal with after this.
That's a lot of people are going to talk about over the coming days and weeks for sure. Retired Army Sergeant Brian Kelly from Foxborough, I might add. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your service.
Thank you for having me, Mark.